surviving the pandemic, surviving the economic downturn, surviving tragedies, we stand together with solidarity, perseverance, and resilience to fight back by sharing knowledge, learning, and networking together with our partners and friends in more than 50 countries. Advisors offer you over 20 panels and webinars.
Talk a little bit more about project management strategy and how you can bridge this gap.
Around the challenges in strategy implementation in the new norm.
Advisor strategy implementation panel.
The panel on agility as a key ingredient for the future of work.
As a part of the Advisors Council on Agility, the core ingredient of future work.
Yeah, panelists in the agility, the core ingredient of the future of work panel with advisors.
Why the planning discipline is so important to the sales process.
Transformation, project management skills, and imperative to changing leadership in the knowledge age.
We've been hearing so much lately about the new normal, the big reset, and so on.
Portfolio, program, and project offices, a P3O for post-pandemic recovery of projects.
To transform project management execution to basic plus.
Collaborating with advisors on a presentation entitled Show Me the Benefits.
The ingredients of successful digitalization projects. So please join me.
Of project management in Russia. See ya.
Advisors webinar titled The Art of Negotiation. See you then.
Project interface management, whether it's an IT infrastructure project or an urban development.
Hello, I'm Richard Farrow, the CEO of the APM Group Limited. I've spent a lifetime in project management.
Asset digitization and use cases within operating industrial facilities for digital data.
Governance 3.0, blind spots that boards face.
Healthcare disruption and project management in the project economy of the COVID-19 era.
I would like to thank advisors for giving me this opportunity to talk about KPI, performance management.
The value that we can add via a PMO, how to show the value that a PMO can give.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you again on this special night, Wednesday night, of Advisors Webinar, Surviving the Pandemic. Tonight, there's something special because I believe tomorrow is the first day of the new Hijri year. So I'd like to say Kul Aam wa Antum Bkhair for everyone. I'd like our esteemed panelists, please, to turn on your camera and audio. Good evening, Dr. Al. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, here. Thank you, Dr. Saadi.
Okay, well, welcome. Good evening, Suzanne. How are you?
Good evening. I'm wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Saadi.
Thank you. You're welcome. Good evening, Eisa. How are you? Maybe you're still muted?
Yes. Yeah.
Now we can hear you. Okay.
Yes.
So, before I start and introduce our esteemed panelists, I'd like to just give a couple of notes. As usual, Mustafa will be sharing the link for claiming the PDUs. And he will also be sharing the link. There is no presentation tonight to download, so this link is not used. Tonight, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Then we will start directly with a poll. And we will have 4 polls and 4 questions. After the first question, I will ask each one of our esteemed panelists to provide their insights. And after the second question, and the third question, and the fourth question, we will open the door for questions from our audience. But what we will do tonight is we will select the top 3 most intriguing, complex, challenging questions, and each one of our panelists will select one to answer of the questions. So this is different than what we did before, meaning I invite our dear participants to ask questions immediately for each one of the challenges. Now, having said that, to quickly introduce our esteemed panelists, I'm gonna start with Suzanne Kopcha. Suzanne is from Siemens. She has a long history in providing contribution to knowledge as a practitioner. She was part of the, she spent 25 years with Procter & Gamble and was part of the Global Council by PMI. And she has a lot to offer us tonight. So thank you, Suzanne, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Then I would like to introduce also Eisa Alali. Eisa is currently the chairman for the technical committee for Hamdan Award for Innovation and Project Management. This is one of the most prestigious awards in the world for project management. He also used to be or still working with the railway in UAE and had multiple leading positions in the world of managing projects. So welcome, Eisa, with us tonight.
Thank you, Doctor. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Al Zeitoun, my dear friend. Welcome again. Dr. Al is a PMI fellow. He worked for over maybe 30 years with Booz and has done lots of work in several locations in the world. He is an international authority in our world of project management and organizational development. So welcome, Dr. Al.
Thank you, Dr. Saadi. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have different time zones because Eisa is with us from Dubai and from Beirut. And Dr. Al, you are from Washington joining us.
Washington, D.C. area. Exactly.
Washington, D.C. And Suzanne, also Washington, or is it Ohio?
Ohio.
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 Okay. So you're welcome, everybody. I'm going to start directly with the poll for our participants. Then we'll get to speak about it and give our reflections. Okay?
Okay.
I prepared something with respect to an introduction to the topic. So allow me to start with this first before we take the poll. It's about the agility. The Agile Manifesto ignited an agile movement that spread in a viral manner within the software industry, producing numerous agile methods and approaches such as Scrum, Safe, Disciplined Agile, and much more. But this is only the beginning, as the agile mindset triggered the urge and even philosophy to be customer-focused, work rapidly and in small chunks, empower front-end teams, and accept failing as a means to learn and move forward in a more efficient manner. Only condition is to fail fast and learn quickly. While quite a few organizations endorse this mindset, organizational agility becomes a topic of great interest that requires furthermore exploration to identify the attributes and factors that encompass the right ingredients that can transform business cultures and offer a more nimble strategy based on trust, accountability, integrity, and focus on achievements and sustainable benefits. So what is organizational agility? And how can it affect our work in the future? Quite intriguing questions. no doubt will require a lot of our thought leaders' time and efforts to shed some light within our exploration for having a better future. So having said that, I will move directly to the poll, the first poll. This is an introductory poll. I would like to ask each one of our participants, why are you here with us tonight? You are here, you want to learn more about organizational agility in specific? Is it that you need to earn more PDUs? You are a subscriber and you always follow our webinars and panels as advisors. You are curious about the speakers. All of the above or something else. If there is something else, you can share in the chat box. So I'm going to give like 20 more seconds for you to key in your answers. Okay. We start with tough questions in the beginning. Okay, I'm gonna keep this till the first round. So we end the poll, and I'm gonna keep the poll results because we have 48%, almost half, they want to learn about organizational agility. 2% are for the PDUs, 8% are subscribers, 4% are curious about the speakers, and all of the above, 36%, 0% and something else. Wow. So our challenge tonight, we're gonna start with the why we are here. And challenge one, how do we form, challenge one or challenge zero, okay? Why we are here tonight. I'm a little bit lost tonight. And I would like to ask our dear panelists to tell me why you are here. And I would like to start with Suzanne. So let me turn this off so that we are clear. And Suzanne, my dear, can you tell me why you are here tonight?
So we laughed about this earlier, but my simple answer is Dr. Al asked me and invited me. We've been friends and colleagues for 20 years. So, you know, anything that he's passionate about, I know is important. But more seriously, I travel the world helping organizations in the consumer products industry with digital transformations every day. And I see that organizational agility and business agility are key challenges. You know, my mission in the work that I do is about helping them with technology and how to provide more agility in their business processes. But if they don't have organizational agility, they won't be able to deliver the sustainable results from the investments that they make. So it's a very important and critical topic that I talk to C-suites about all the time. In my experiences and, you know, in the diversity of the work that I've done and the people that I talk to, if any of that can help companies, you know, one of the other things that I am very passionate about is servant leadership and giving back. So I hope I'm here because I hope that the experiences that I've had can help the people in your network and your organization.
Thank you very much. This makes two of us. Whenever Al is there, I like to be.
Me too. You know, Al is our favorite.
Okay, but before we move on, I'd like you to tell us very quickly, what is the servant leader? Okay, maybe some of us hear it for the first time.
So for me, servant leadership is a part of my leadership style is about enabling and helping others. You know, part of being a leader in the industry, part of being a leader in my organization is to help other companies and help people within my organization be successful. So, you know, charitable contribution, whether it be in the business environment or in my personal life, is just something that is very important to me. So I don't believe in, you know, dictated leadership or command and control types of leadership. I love to give back. I love to collaborate with people to help them be more successful.
Excellent. Okay, I like all these traits and attributes you're talking about, and we're gonna keep this thought with us in the coming discussion. Now, Eisa, can you tell us, please, why are you here tonight?
For two reasons. I will surprise you with the first reason. When you invited me, you didn't know me, but I knew you before because you were my teacher in 2007. You are the first one who taught me academically about project management and encouraged me to enter this world. But because you, doctor, teach many people, so might have forgotten that. That's the first driver for me to attend.
My dear, I'm happy, but this was in Abu Dhabi.
This was in Dubai.
In which year?
In 2007, when you were with CMCS.
Yes. Okay. And I said you look very much familiar. Okay, we had your picture with us and all the campaign and everything, and now I know you. Okay,
now
you're welcome, my dear.
Yes, so because
I'm very happy. You've made my day.
I just wanted to surprise you. I didn't tell you that before. The second reason is definitely the topic is something very important to talk about these days. Organizations are going through a lot of change. If we think about the past, economic changes used to take longer time. So there was a lot of traditional classical management to manage projects or enterprises. But with a fast pace, how economy is moving, a classical and traditional way to manage enterprises are not suitable anymore. We see the economy change every year or every 2 years. They're up and down. With that requires a different skill set, a different attributes, a different type of leadership, and a different type of organization to manage the current and also the future.
Very interesting indeed.
Yeah,
okay.
Thanks.
And I'm happy because your focus is on innovation. Okay.
Yes.
So and organizational agility is something I believe sort of innovative or not. Maybe we can discuss this.
Of course, Doctor. But although my most of my career experience was with more physical and rigid kind of infrastructure, but I always thought that there is even for the most sophisticated and more heavy industry, there are areas for innovation and there are areas for disruption. And I think that's the only way for those industries can excel and not be interrupted by other industries.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm happy, Dr. Al, I kept you till the end because to me, I cannot add anything to what our two dear panelists said. So surprise us, please.
Well, I mean, first of all, you took away my option to say I'm here because I want to be with Al, right? So that's gone. So again, please let's not turn this into a love fest. I know I enjoy so much being with this phenomenal group. I think it's the camaraderie and the professional careers of everyone here on the panel. I think it's contagious. So I'm very happy to be here. You know, although if I look at your panel results or first poll results from attendees of the panel today, I'm thinking, wow, I may have to really invest in medical treatment after this. Only 4% are curious about the speakers, so I'm not really that relevant.
So, I can give you an insight on this. Yeah, we select some of the best minds. Okay, so they know. If you are going to be a speaker with us, you're going to provide real value.
Okay. That will calm me down a little bit.
Maybe, Dr. Al, maybe most of them, the 96% already know us and only 4% they still
Thanks for making me feel better.
Good one.
On a serious note, just to allow me to move on. So I think, though, really being with this great group, I think there's a lot in common in our path. When I was reflecting on your question now that I had a few moments and hearing also Suzanne and Eisa speak, I think I would say that I'm at an inflection point, if I don't want to complicate it so much. I think we are, because of COVID-19 and the events around the world, and we cannot forget the events also Lebanon is going through. So our prayers to Lebanon, and the real tragedy and the hope, hopefully ahead of Lebanon as well, to stand strong. But the reality, when I say inflection point, I think we are in a refresh stage, right? So literally organizations, in my opinion, need to be, and I personally need to be, in a real reset and refresh phase of my life and my impact. Because if I look at where I can be of value in this day and age, and I like Suzanne's comment about the servant leadership for sure, because that's really core to the passion and why we would invest energy and time to be also in events like this with you. I found myself, if I find one thing that I want to be doing more for myself and my organizations, is to simplify and also minimize friction. I think we've really created unnecessary friction in the way we do what we do and how our organizations operate. So I'm a big fan now, and thus organizational agility. I'm a huge fan of the importance of, can we be simple enough? Can we cut through the multitude of noise, distractions, unnecessary conditions that have been almost like created above and beyond what our ecosystems and our organizations need to be even dealing with? Can we filter through all of that, and can we minimize friction and really simplify? So I'm a big fan of that, and hopefully also building on what Eisa mentioned around innovation. This really is core, in my personal opinion, in organizational agility as well. So I'm looking forward to our discussions for sure.
Welcome everyone. I'd like just to I remember this thing. I believe it was Ford or someone else. He had a board meeting, and they only gave him 2 days to prepare. So he came with a 30 pages report, and he said, I could not do the simple version of 1-page executive summary because that will take a week. I was only able to prepare 30 pages within the time allocated to me. So yes, I think you nailed it. Simplifying is hard. To simplify, but yet what you all mentioned or implied to keep on the value, maybe even enhance the value while simplifying. This is very, very big. This is huge. If we can reach this stage or a recipe for this, wow, I think many organizations will benefit. So with this, I'd like to welcome you again. And we're not gonna take questions just yet. We're gonna start with the second challenge. Actually, the first challenge, the first one is the pre, which is why we are here. We're gonna start with it and start with the poll. Then we'll do the challenge. Okay, so the poll for our dear participants, in your opinion, how many organizations adopt a philosophy of openness and transparency? And you need to select from less than 10% to more than 75%. We'll give it like 20 seconds. Okay, numbers are still toggling a bit. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the poll now. Okay, more than 75%, 1%. Wow, I need to know who these are. And less than 10%, sorry, it's 25%. We have almost 28, 29, around a little bit less than third, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, between 50 and 75, 15%. And this will get us to our challenge for our panels tonight, how to form the open and transparent organization of the future. And for this, let me just, we're talking about open, transparent organization. And let us start with Eisa. Okay, what do you have to tell us about this first challenge, please.
Speaking about transparency, I think the first step towards building a culture of transparency is a proper communication and making information more accessible. While some enterprises' information is highly sensitive and needs to be held back for security reasons, most day-to-day information and decision-making processes can easily be made more open and available. I think when this isn't the case, for example, when important contextual discussions happen in private emails chain or Slack of channels, teams can end up with duplicate work or poor decision-making that makes innovation more difficult to achieve and negatively impact the organization's and competitiveness edge. Companies with culture of openness and free flowing information is better equipped to ride out difficult economies, such as the economies that we are in. We are through tough times similar to today's COVID-19 pandemic. I believe that people and information are an enterprise's greatest asset. Transparency helps to build interpersonal trust between employees, regardless of position, especially when there are clear systems in place to communicate. When people are enabled to ask the right question in open and honest way, it nurtures a mutual understanding and encourages more people to share and encourage and collaborate with each other. So I would say building a feeling of what I call we are all in this together is especially important when organizations are going through large changes. When all employees share the same reality via transparent communication, change initiative is much more likely to be successful. Think about a proper communication and transparency, which leads to a healthier relationship between the employees and their leaders. As they say, at least 25% of employees don't trust their employers. And we saw from the statistics, even the figures might be more about the transparency that they can see in their organization. As they say, people don't leave their jobs just because they don't like the company. They leave mainly because of managers not properly engaging or communicating with them. And statistics show that at least 60 to 70% of the employees would get engaged when their senior leaders continually communicate their strategy. This would lead automatically to increased productivity and supported innovation. Imagine when the flow of information is coming to everybody, that would automatically increase the productivity and supported innovation. When information and expertise is accessible, employees can take initiatives to solve their own problems rather than spending time to figure out who has the information that they need to do their job. It also supports people to come up with more creative solutions. I think exposing organization silos opens people up to new ideas and diverse way of thinking across department. It encourages continuous feedback and collaborative problem solving.
Wow, mashallah, yani, you provided a load of ideas, okay? I need time to comprehend. But I will definitely, you not learn this from me 13 or 14 years back, okay? This is not part of the film book, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one thing I love from what you said, I love many things actually, but one very interesting idea just came to me. For transparency, it's not that the boss should trust the team or employee. It's the other way around. If you are the boss of the future, you need your employees to trust you.
Exactly.
Exactly. Then you are a leader. Okay?
Currently, the situation is the other way around. When you ask the bosses or the leaders, they say, I don't trust everybody, or I don't trust certain people, or I cannot easily trust people. But what do you think about them? Do they trust you as well?
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
I
Thank
think
you very much.
You should have a more transparent approach about as much as possible of information to flow, and then trust will be vice versa. Trust is never one way. It's a two-way engagement relationship.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, Suzanne.
Well, I think Eisa took most of what I was going to say, so I completely agree with everything that he said. But I think that I think it's very important what he just said. Trust has to be mutual. I think in an open and transparent organization, there has to be an intentional development of a culture of trust. You know, I grew up in an organization for security reasons where there was what we called a need to know principle. And you were only told information if your boss thought you needed to know it. And that doesn't inspire empowerment. It doesn't inspire creativity. It doesn't inspire the innovation, you know, that Eisa referred to. I think if we really want open and transparent organizations, they have to be built on a culture, a foundational culture of trust and mutual trust. Leaders need to trust their employees to do the right thing for the company, and employees need to share leadership, that they have direction. But I think it's also very, very important that leaders can communicate clearly what the North Star is of the organization. Last week, Ricardo talked about the North Star and the purpose and clarity of purpose of organizations, and he was spot on. You know, leaders, to earn that trust of their employees, have to also be able to give clear and direct, direction of where the organization is going and why they're going there. You know, we see lots of different examples in the industry today because of what's going on, where leaders are prominently speaking about things that may have nothing to do with what people think the purpose of their organization is. An example, my old employer, Procter & Gamble, the CEO of that company, David Taylor, is a very esteemed leader, doing a fantastic job with the company, but he's also very visible and very vocal about the importance of sustainability and carbon neutrality and protecting the environment. Most people wouldn't think that that is a purpose of P&G, but innate to who they are as a company, they believe that they have to ensure that improving the lives of the world's consumers is about also protecting the environment, and being very clear about that to his employees helps them be able to deliver to that mission as well. So clarity of communication, clarity of purpose and direction, I think is really important to gain the trust of your employees. But I think we will talk later about empathy. You know, I think that empathy is also very important. Leaders, to earn that trust of their employees, need to help their employees know that they care about them not only for what they deliver to the company, but who they are as individuals as well, who they are as a part of the society that companies, you know, interact with. But a couple other things that I think are really important for building openness and transparency. Eisa talked about information accessibility, and I think that's absolutely critical. In many organizations, information is power, and people use data and information and they keep it closed so that they have power. Once that data and information is accessible, it allows everybody to be able to bring their best, you know, to every interaction for the company, and I think that's critical. But we also have to build a culture where people's ideas for innovation are valued regardless of what their hierarchy role is. Everybody has the ability to, you know, input into what innovation, what improvements can be for a company, or what their ideas are, and those are taken with merit based on, you know, that person's mastery and the information they have, not based on their position. So having, you know, flatter organizations where roles are, you know, based on mastery, I think is going to be very important to the organization of the future as well.
So you talked about belief. the belief of the leader, which is shown through their actions.
Yeah.
And you talked about also the culture. So there is a relationship between the belief system of the leader and the culture. If we don't have the right formula, there will never be the right information sharing, and people would grow silos like the ones Eisa spoke about a bit before, because in silos they formulate their own empires, okay, and they remain in power and prohibit anybody from growing, and this will make the organization age quickly with lots of maybe good talent not tapped, because they are not allowed to innovate, they are not allowed to be listened to or to be heard.
Yeah, and I think that the other part of that, what you made me think about, is authenticity. You know, to have open and transparent organizations, leaders have to be authentic, because employees are very smart and they can see through, you know, lack of authenticity. So I think, you know, that authenticity is going to be critical in leadership.
Very, very interesting. I'm going to keep the authenticity thing as well. Thank you, Suzanne. Now, my dear, your call.
Yeah, you put me, so a couple of things. You put me last, which is kind of interesting, but that's fine. I mean, I'm going to talk to you about it later. Just like you say, Antonio wants to give you a hard time when you run late, or when you talk about, Suzanne just now mentioned my dear friend Ricardo as well. And I think great insights came up from the last panel a week ago, and this builds nicely on it for sure. I want to talk about culture for a moment, because I think, you know, if we have, 220 or so people roughly in the session so far. And, if you ask that question about culture, if you had a different poll about culture and how you would even define it, I think we're going to get very different answers. One thing for sure that's really important to me is culture at the end of the day is a set of behaviors, right? So whether Eisa talks about the environment of trust, or Suzanne talks about, translating that into the DNA of the organization, for lack of a better word, or how we operate and how we do our work in the future. I think what I found to be really important, and that's why I think both have covered almost all the critical points of this question. And your question, or the challenge, is way wide, right? So it's encompassing so many different things, obviously. So what I would say is that if you look at the title of our panel around agility and around the future of work, the reality is, to get to that culture, we have to have transparency. You almost have to have the title, if it's not transparency, then what, right? So, I mean, to expect in 2020 and beyond, going into 2030, that it's not going to be a critical component for how we operate would be almost insanity. I'll give you an example. You mentioned Booz Allen Hamilton and my years with the firm, and you kind of exaggerated the number of years a little bit, but I'm not going to correct you right now. But the reality is, in my journey with Booz Allen Hamilton, every client, and because we're serving also many of the world governments, starting from the US and then across the Middle East and other parts of the world, the real value, if I had to pinpoint one value, this kind of a classic trusted advisor role, an advisory or consultancy like that provides, has to be built on the full transparency. Every client who has not benefited from the ability of a major consultancy to do the work that they do, to help them transform, help them to rethink how they do what they do this refresh phase I mentioned in the intro earlier, it's not going to happen without that. I mean, I almost, was inclined in your last question to us to say, I'm here today also because it's really, a topic that there's a lot of learning still that hasn't happened. For example, ENEC, when I work with the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation, and they have a major milestone today as we speak. They finally connected to the grid in the UAE, which is a fantastic event. The reality is that's what nuclear industry is all about. It is transparency. But how do you plug that in and just say, hey, we're going to have a transparent culture? Or is that a set of behaviors that are cascading across the board, from the leaders down and from the bottom up and across the organization? So really, I mean, it does require us to realize it's going to be massive hard work. Massive hard work that is anchored in relevance. We need to understand what we're doing to the organization. How are we affecting the results of the business, but also how are we doing that in the business of people? Because at the end of the day, a culture is a set of those behaviors that people contribute. And if transparency is not the case, it's not going to be there, then I don't know how we can even begin to tackle the topic of agility. The reality is, if you look at Brené Brown, if you look at Simon Sinek, if you look at a video around the Leader Speak class, or you look at Brené Brown, went back to Suzanne's point about authenticity. I mean, Brené tackles the vulnerability side. If you're not able to create a culture that has vulnerability as a key, we're not going to learn. We're not going to be able to adapt. We're not going to be able to really tilt with the market like what we have today. I mean, look at what happened today. Another milestone, Apple, $2 trillion. They doubled their business since the beginning of the crisis or the pandemic. How did they do it? It's just simply utilizing the reliance on digital, or are they actually doing, again, we have to get under the hood to understand exactly what the organization is doing culturally to get to a level where everyone can contribute to mission and to impact. And hopefully that ties to an impact that's of value to more organizations. So very intriguing question, to be honest. And I think we looked at some critical dimensions here so far, yeah.
Yeah, I love what you said, Al. In a simple manner, we tried not to be transparent, and it did not work. Okay, so we have to be more transparent. As simple as that. Right. Okay, we have to give access to knowledge, access to data, access to information. Okay, and we have to allow others to try and to innovate and to make mistakes. Okay, not to be defensive, because when people are afraid, there is a culture of blame. Or a culture of you did not do it, I did it, and competition and things like that, the negative part, because there is always positive competition that drives people to go forward. But when there is this negativity all around and people are defensive, the one who does nothing does not make any mistake. Yeah. And then the whole organization does nothing. And they age quickly and they are out. Okay, the ones you're talking about, you mentioning, all these are organizations that do lots of development, lots of trials, lots of innovation. And in one of the workshops I attended, I believe Sony, they assess every year, I don't know how many tens of thousands of ideas, and they come up to maybe less than 2,000, and then within detailed planning, less than 100 would go through, and then after that, only a fraction succeeds. But this fraction that succeeds would provide the return on investment for the whole effort they've been doing. Okay, for all it will pay for all the mistakes, and if you do not do the mistakes, you're not gonna move on forward.
And one of the learning I'm getting out of that, and what you said, and also our colleagues in the panel, I think, if I have to say, all right, so what's one takeaway I have so far? I think it's the organizationally agile entity basically is a very engaged entity. I'm hearing a lot of what has been shared so far around the trust and around the authenticity, etc. That allows that openness, Saadi, to a great extent, to become a much more engaged organization. And then when you are engaged, building on last week's panel, for example, you're going to be able to not struggle with transforming and all the other initiatives around strategy as well. Yeah.
Excellent, great. Now it's time to take the first set of questions. So 3 questions. I'd like each one of you to select one. I know I confess, if when I focus with you and try to comprehend what you're talking about, I cannot at the same time read the questions, okay? Especially some of them are really complex. This is why I trust you. I'm very transparent with you to select the questions you like.
I can take the governance. I see a question on governance. Unless you want to take that, Suzanne, there's a question about openness and trust and how they are tied to governance. I don't know if you want to take that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can start with that. Yeah, no problem. So I can take that. So governance, again, if I just go back to the nuclear example, one of my recent experiences in the region, one of the efforts, for example, was really about how to excel in governance at the board level. I mean, a major program, a complex program like that, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars. Reality is, this is an example where you have to figure out exactly how your governance works. Now, so you look at the culture of the board, you look at the culture of how things cascade in the organization. You invest in your culture, you invest in the behaviors you want to exemplify, like I mentioned in my answer a minute ago. But then also, I mean, if I look at the question, why applying the governance frameworks in organizations is not a mandate and even no index is created to measure the governance performance, one of the things I would love for us to be thinking when we are talking about today's topic, and when you mentioned the topic when we talked a couple of weeks back that we want to do this, one of the things I jotted down is, everybody talks about manifestos, right? So I literally put on a piece of paper my views of an organizational agility manifesto. And one of the elements, so I broke it into 3 sections, the culture, the systems, the people. And then in reality, when it talks about systems, people, and or culture, this is all about finding the answer to this, right? How can we, almost there's a fine line, and you may remember, mentioning some of that in my session with you a few weeks back. It's really this fine line between autonomy and alignment. I mean, I'm also, by the way, back to that question from Munir, I'm really not a big fan of the word governance. If anything in this day and age, I would rather just call it, alignment, just to play with the words a little bit, or something along those lines, because it's not a policing. If we're still thinking that via program management, via strategy execution, or via the ways by which we design the future of work, we're going to still go to a classic model for governing and control. That mindset and that view of the role of the leader and or the ones who are taking us into the future, in my opinion, need to be completely detonated. This is not what we need to be focusing on. So I would rather say for a framework, make it really context driven. You do not want to follow back to your introduction about an agile manifesto or anything like that. These are guidelines, just like the PMBOK guide, and it was intended to be just to open the door when it comes to the world of project management. Same here, in my opinion. Let's go frameless. Let's really, invest in finding what is suitable for our organizations of the future. And that, to me, would be the best way I've seen in action work for the organizations I either advise or the ones I've worked for over my recent years as well. But, Suzanne, if you want to add something to that, if you like, since you're going to take the next question, or just go ahead to your next question. It's up to you.
No, I think you did a great job. I'll just go to the next question. And it's really more of a dialogue, so I don't know that I have a clear answer. But Mohammed asked, is it organization agility or personal agility is more accurate? Is it actually having an agile strategy for the company? So I think it's a really complex question. Personally, from my experience, I think it really is about organizational agility. I think that people have to be open and adaptive and be able to pivot. But I think it's about organizations being able to be open to their surroundings, understanding their surroundings and what's happening, and having the agility to act and respond. I think that can be applied to any strategy. So I don't think you have to have an agile strategy for your company, but you have to be able to be responsive to the environment and what's going on. I had someone I knew in the industry many years ago, probably 15 years ago, and this one individual had a very unique capability to be able, he spent more time understanding what was going on outside his company than he did leading inside his company. And he could have absolute clarity what the organization needed to pivot and become 18 months in the future. And he would get his organization to be able to make small changes without even knowing it. And literally they could shift the whole organization within a few months based on his direction. But it was really about his strategy for the organization, which wasn't an agile strategy, but it was enabling his organization to pivot based on the needs of the future. So I really think it is about how do we have the knowledge, the openness to new ideas, the context of what's happening in the environment, and the ability to pivot as an organization to achieve changing objectives or to deal with uncertain times and conditions.
Very, very interesting. One thing that came to me within your answer is that for the organization to be really agile, the leader should be also have some traits of agility, because they are much connected to each other. An agile person cannot drive a non-agile organization or vice versa. What do you think?
No, I think that's true. I think that leaders have to be open to change and open to conditions. And be able to evaluate those conditions. If someone is truly very strict to their strategy and driving execution outside the context of what's happening outside of them, I don't think they will ever lead an agile organization. They may deliver with excellence and not achieve the North Star, or they may achieve something in the North Star shifted, but they didn't even know it. And that's something that a lot of companies are challenged with, is they get so focused on the execution of what's happening inside their company, but they don't look at the context of the environment that they're either operating in or competing in. And when the environment shifts or the competitive nature shifts and you don't know it, that could be a recipe for disaster.
You reminded me with an opening I always use when we speak about managing benefits. The famous joke, the doctor came out of the operation room and he said, I have good news and I have bad news. Good news, operation succeeded. Bad news, the patient died. So maybe projects can succeed. You can have good, powerful people, enablers who can move mountains. But what if you selected the wrong mountain?
Don't get me started, Dr. Saadi, on that one when it comes to projects. Did Eisa pick a question, or is he not going to answer?
I haven't done yet. We do it all the time.
Eisa's turn now.
I know all the answers.
Okay. Is there a question you're going to answer? Which one?
No, I think there are so many questions, but I picked up upon one question, I think, from Alberto. Are organizations structured around communication flows are better suited for success and organization agility? Definitely. As we said, communication is very essential. Imagine half of the communication is not happening, or 1/3 of what need to be transferred to employees, to system is not happening. Imagine in a context of very mega complex project management. You don't know what is happening on daily basis. In project management, you know that we have instant report, we have dashboard, we have a lot of information to make decision and safeguard this project. And I agree with Dr. Ala that we don't need to call it governance anymore. We have to move from the old days of bringing rules and policing people in organization into creating a culture. I think the right place and the right word, one of the key words today is culture. Culture of transparency and openness, culture of innovation, culture of customer centrics. That is more important than creating rules and system in place. Automatically, even if the leader is not there, the culture would lead people towards achieving the goals and objectives of the organization.
So, Dr. Saadi, I love that answer, but I'm not going to let you comment so much on that because we're you know me, I'm going to cut you on time.
Yeah.
So listen,
Yeah.
it's one of the questions. Very quickly, I'm going to take one less than a couple of seconds. There's a question also from Fathi that I wanted to just recognize because I did talk about consultants and the fact that I also operated for a big consultancy for many years. And he's talking about really what happens when these consultancy actually make you take the wrong decisions, hide information, etc. So it goes right to the core as we wrap up that first challenge, right? My answer to that, I'm going to give it simply, is that we need to take ownership of consultants. Consultants can be your worst enemy or your best friend. And, you really need to stop, just kind of like when Eisa was talking about the boss, etc. Take ownership of that. You have the wrong boss, talk to the boss. You don't insult them in front of others. Don't do the same also with consultants. But we got to take ownership of this topic. We cannot invest the way we invest in consultancy unless we really own that relationship and own the purpose of that relationship, own the reason and the impact we want to see ourselves having in our future organizations. Suzanne, if you want to comment briefly, but I think we need to,
I couldn't agree with you more. I think so many companies invest in consultants and they just let the consultants go and do what they want. And I have many, colleagues and friends that are consultants that are very, very intelligent people, but you have to own what they do and you need to be able to ensure that you can own the implementation of what you do. The terrible thing is I see many, many companies investing in consultants and then they spend $1 million or $2 million or $10 million, the consultant leaves and then nothing happens because they didn't own making the decisions, implementing, because they let the consultants recommend things that they couldn't materialize for their company or monetize.
Thank you, Dr. Saadi. I'm ready for the next one.
For the next one, while I turn it on, you reminded me of our friend Antonio, and he has a saying that you can outsource the building of the strategy. You cannot outsource the implementation.
I love it.
So now we are at Paul 2. Otherwise, see what happened to Enron. Why do we forget all the time? So the second poll for our dear and esteemed participants: choose the attribute of agility that is the most critical. Is it people skills and collaboration, competencies, culture that endorses innovation, accepts failure as a means to learn, systems of excellence, digitization and sustainability, customer centricity and stakeholder engagement, the alignment between strategy development and strategy implementation of transformational initiatives. Okay, so I'm gonna give it like 10 more seconds. Okay, I will end the poll now. Still toggling. Okay, 2 more seconds. 1, 2, end. So this gets us to our second challenge. What is the right context to aligning across systems and people, and thus achieve most valued stakeholders experience? One thing before we start, I know the question, the poll tool that I made is a tricky poll because they are all correct. I just wanted to see what is more important. So it seems 46%, most of the people, almost half, spoke about culture that endorses innovation, accepts failure. And number 2, about the alignment between strategy and the implementation. 3 is the people skills and collaboration, for customer centricity, and only 1% on systems of excellence, digitization, and sustainability. Perhaps it makes sense because if you have the first 4, the 5th one will be just the aftermath. So what's the right context to aligning across systems and people, thus achieve most valued stakeholder experience? And this time, let us start with Al. What do you think, Al? Start with you?
Great. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. I can do that. Absolutely.
Okay, Allah.
I'm just going to comment on you reading the polls, and I think you hit it almost on nail on the head there. If you look at the answer that says systems of excellence, digitization, and sustainability getting 1%, what does that tell us? What does that tell us about transformation and investment, just like we were talking about investment and transformation initiatives, when in fact 70% of them, as probably was alluded to last session, totally go disaster and it's totally a wasted investment, etc. So right there, the solution is not the technology. Even in this age of COVID-19 and the fact that we all are, right in front of our technology and using our technology almost, entirely, the reality is that still doesn't get it. That does not get us the agility that we need or the results that we need on its own. It's people and systems again. Are the systems conducive? Which goes back to the culture. Look at your culture score, yeah? And the culture score, if you look at that, the reality is what? We talk about culture eats strategy for breakfast every given day. Got it. So what does that really mean? Well, you can have the best intentions, you can have the best in terms of, the decisions on your, people, etc. But if you don't enable them, I cannot emphasize how important it is to unleash, the word I would have to pick here is, how can I unleash the power of my organization via the renewed and refreshed way by which I can encourage my people to work in our organizations over the future. If I cannot do that, I'm not going to get to the place that we really want to have. Yeah, so I'm fascinated. I'm learning a lot by some of the polls, even though this is a complex one. And you're right, you're giving people a hard time by giving them very encouraging answers. I'm not going to go further. I want to hear Suzanne on this one.
Oh, he passes the baton. So he knows that I have to agree and disagree a little bit with him.
No
so
problem.
I absolutely agree that it's all about empowering employees, and I loved the word unleash. I was going to say liberate, but unleash the creativity and innovation potential of employees. But I've spent 30 years of my career coming up with how technology can play a role to enable. Technology is not a panacea. Technology is not going to create the context, but I do believe that technology plays a very important role with people and culture in providing the transparency of information, providing the platforms of collaboration for people. And most importantly, most recently, I've spent a lot of time on helping organizations to leverage technology to unleash what they know. One of my famous kind of statements is, a lot of times I work with companies and they don't know what they know what they know. Like, if we could just leverage technology to help them unleash what they already know inside their work systems, data systems, people, the history of their innovation, and be able to reuse that in order to accelerate the new innovation that they can do and not repeat work, not continue to do non-value added work. It creates a culture of winning. It creates a culture that is much more productive, that can much more easily deliver against stakeholders. So I absolutely believe that it's a triangle. It's people, culture, and technology to enable companies to go after and deliver that North Star that stakeholders want.
Very, very interesting. Actually, right now in my company, we are reviewing the strategy every month or every week. And we came to a point, we're trying to make some decisions. So I told my team, stop. We teach people how to do business analytics, but we never honestly used it on us. So, and we have lots of data. So I told them, get all the data. And we met with our expert in business analytics. And he said, okay, but it needs cleansing in this way, coordinated in this manner, provided to me with the challenges or the optimization or the answers or the trends, whatever you want to look for. So for the first time in my life, I said, okay, I'm not going to put goals. Let us listen to the data. We have the data, and it includes the trend, the answer to the treasure. We just have to be able to read it properly. Okay.
If your data is high quality, that's one of the challenges, and where I agree with Al completely, is technology is not an easy button, nor is AI. The problem right now in the industry is that everybody thinks that AI is the easy button, and if I use artificial intelligence and deep analytics on the data in my company, I'm going to get the answers to help me be more agile, be more responsive, etc. But if you've never invested for your data to be clean and accurate, one of the sayings is garbage in, garbage out.
It's still relevant, absolutely. Yeah,
exactly. After 30 years, still relevant.
On broken processes or data does not give you better answers.
Thank you. Now, Eisa.
It's a tricky challenge. We all know there is no right or wrong, especially that the attributes of agility sometimes might be affected by the business model. Are you B2C or B2B, or by industry? For example, if you are in supply chain industry or hospitality, or you are in healthcare or industry or construction, it might be a slightly different approach or different factors that might be important to your business. I would just let's all of us think about this pandemic. If we are back to 1990, so it would be called COVID-90. And if COVID-90 took place, back then there was no mobile phone, internet was not quite common. computer was very seldom. So how would have those industries have responded to something unusual in history of humankind? Definitely many would have been out of the market or have very difficulties to respond. But today, yes, with technology, we have been able to respond quicker. Look at us today. A forum like this, for example, would require a lot of infrastructure, physical place, a ballroom. It was more expensive in the past to have 220 people in one place. But today we do it at a very low cost, easily, very flexible. We have adapted to the definitely technology have helped us to adapt more and become more resilient. But technology at the end of the day is an enabler. It's not the agility but it's an enabler. It helps you. Some companies, for example, were more successful than others just because they were more prepared. They are more ready internally as organizations. They have a better way of managing the change. So they succeeded in change. Others did not succeed, although technology was available for everybody. But some of them can leverage on technology. Others were not able to leverage. It goes back to the basics. You have to be customer-centric. Why do you exist? To serve a customer, to provide a value, to provide a benefit. I would give you example of my past experience when I was a Deputy Director General for Expo 2020 in 2015, for example. It was a virgin land. There's nothing. It was sand, and we had to come up with idea how we're going to manage this program. It's not a classical construction site. It's not just a project. It's not just a program. There will be an event. There is post-event legacy that the different life after Expo. So you have 3 different life that you have to think about. Going with a classical project management approach was very, I saw it was scary because you will end up just looking at the physical aspect, but not considering stakeholders, for example, third parties, your partners. So for the first time, I created strategic alignment role as part of the project management, not as part of the organization, so that the project management team become more dynamic and the leader can have more information on daily basis of what's happening, not only in the downstream and in the project, but also we need to know about the objectives that the city of Dubai having and the other stakeholders. What are they doing in parallel? Look today the value of that in a pandemic. When you know everything together, you can easily respond. You can easily communicate to the world. I'm very sure that next year, Expo 2020 would be something amazing that the world would see. It can't be done with a very basic and classical management. It requires different adaptability, a different resilience in your system. Technology is not the only thing. It's an enabler, but I think there are other attributes to agility, such as strategic alignment, communication, innovation, and also collaboration.
What can I say? You said collaboration. And before that, you said organizational silos. Okay, now Al knows what I'm going to say. This was my topic for my PhD research. Okay, now, the thing about you guys is that I'd love for us to stay for another hour or two, but I know some of you have commitments. So we have to move on. Now, I would ask each one of you to pick a question, please, and try to answer it in 1 minute, because we still have to have the third challenge, the poll, the third challenge, and their questions, then the wrap up. Okay? So pick a question, and you have
Yeah, I'll try.
You have 30 seconds, Al.
Yeah.
You used a lot of time before. Yeah.
No. I'll do 30 seconds. So count me. Yeah. So there was a question from, I think, Joshua, and I think he was talking about idealism, right? Some of the things you were talking about almost come across like ideal states, right? Especially when it comes to the operational pressure. So my comment very quickly on that one. Yes, it might be idealistic, but we're trying to shape the future, right? The reality is, if nothing will change the world today with COVID-19 in terms of rethinking our business models, nothing will, right? So if we still want to achieve outcomes, results, grow P&L, promote and grow our people, etc., we've got to find a way by which we are connecting to our people differently, we are using our people differently, and allow them back to not overuse the word collaborate, really accomplish a way by which they work in a space that they truly can be themselves and help our organizations. Yes, idealistic, but the reality is we've got to rethink our business models and how our people can be, back to this word, engaged, and maybe the unleashing, or what Suzanne also had her take on that word as well. In either way, we need to figure a way where people are the center. Technology, we can see. When our backs were against the wall, every transformation initiative that was technology-centered almost managed to get its outcome within a very short window. So the urgency puts us in a place where we can, when we are forced to be agile. But can we catch up with the pace by which we change our people? So that was a little more than 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Eisa, your question, please.
Yeah, how hard is the adoption of the agile organization culture? It can be hard and it can be easy. It will be hard if you have the wrong people with you. You don't bring the right talent for the first. I mean, it's contagious. The innovation is contagious, and also the negativities are contagious. So if you have, I would say, on first level and leadership level, you have category A type of talent with you, they will spread the adoption of agility across the board. But if you have the wrong people in the higher level and then the right people in the lower level, then it will be very difficult to achieve agility.
Very interesting. Suzanne, your question, please.
Okay.
One thing, by the way, which caught my ear a lot, several times, contagious. Okay, it's negative in the pandemic, but you all used it in the positive sense, which is beautiful, guys. Sorry, Suzanne.
Energy, passion, etc. Go ahead, Suzanne.
So the question, I'm going to simplify the question, but it's basically how can you be more agile and adopt an agile mindset if your boss isn't? And my simple answer is start with yourself and the people that you impact. You can start building. Culture has to be changed, one person at a time. It's obviously going to be much more difficult if your management isn't on the same journey, but you can always build trust and openness with the people that you influence. So I would just say start with yourself. Try to influence your management, but start with yourself and the people that you influence.
This is positivity. Now, our last poll, I'm gonna put it on and go back to the slides for the okay. Select the number one leadership attribute that serves organizational agility. Is it empathy, adaptability, risking failure to learn, collaboration, or integration? So, looking at the, give like 20 seconds to see the answers. Okay, I'll stop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everybody answered? Okay. So, adaptability comes first, followed by collaboration, then a close tie between empathy, risking failure to learn, and last is the integration. Again, there is no wrong answer here. It's just we need to see what is the bias of the audience. And challenge 3, who are the future empathetic leaders and how much do they count on adaptability, risk-taking, and collaboration to succeed? And here I'm gonna go back and stop the slide. And I will ask Eisa to come first now, please.
Yeah. This is a very passionate topic to me, actually. I love the topic when it comes to leadership, different style, modern leaders, future leaders, situational leader, which I'm more passionate about. And most importantly, these days, we talk about emotional intelligence and leadership. So the empathetic leaders, usually they are not common, they are not classical, they have more emotional intelligence. And I think it's one of the most important attributes or characteristics of a modern organization's leader. Those type of leaders, they truly listen. They not just listen, but they truly listen and listen without interruption. They are very careful to be fully present in discussions. They put themselves in the shoes of the others. They don't bring judgment or bias into discussion. They deviate from being biased and just listen for understanding the other person. Sometimes maybe focusing on the posture or body language. They also can encourage others who are non-dominating in discussions. You can see in a meeting or in an organization, some of them have something to say, but they are quiet. This is their characters. So empathetic leaders, they can find out those and encourage those quiet ones to speak out. They take personal interest. Not all the dialogue and discussion had to be about professional and about business. They can be other personal indulgence, I could say, asking about certain non-business related questions and establish relations. This would automatically lead to leaders leading from within. Empathy becomes an emotional and a thinking muscle, I would say, that becomes stronger with us. So that becomes, I would say, again, contagious. If you spread positivity and openness among the team, they would spread it across the board towards the others. And by understanding and providing employees with what they need to succeed, leaders can build a sense of trust. Again, as we said earlier, trust is very important, thereby, I would say, strengthening the relationship they have with their employees and consequently the relationship employees have with one another. This is leading to a greater collaboration and more improved productivity. These type of leaders who are empathetic leaders allow employees to feel safe with failures because they simply won't be blamed for these failures. As such, they would be able to understand the root cause behind poor performance and to build and develop a relationship with those leads. So imagine that transparency, empathy, building trust, giving opportunity for failure, and then learning from failure from the root cause analysis, then people have more confidence on their leaders and in the organization. And then this would foster innovation from within and would establish a new culture in the organization. And I have been always saying that the culture is very important. Organization culture compromise your core values, your rewarded behavior and performance drivers. If you reinforce your culture after you have done the work of establishing the culture, you have to realign all the time the culture in the organization. Accordingly, the outcome would be you communicate your culture norms on an ongoing basis. You will take action to address conflicting behavior all the time. You will encourage employees to recognize culture champions, for example. You can know those who are the cultural champions. So if you reward those people, there will be more, encouragement within people that there is an appreciation or acceptance for encouraging this culture to be spread, and this reward desired behavior to change. So I would say, don't let the culture manage you. You have to manage the culture of the organization. When you establish and reinforce your culture to support your strategic goals, to innovate, you create an environment where it's safe to fail and employees are encouraged to take some more risk. This will create a culture of collaboration, adaptability, and more tangible innovation.
Thank you. Now, directly to Suzanne. Okay, we are now running against the time. So, Suzanne, then Al, then we're gonna take 3 questions and have a recap, all in 14 minutes. Let's see how we can do it. Suzanne.
Okay, I'm gonna say, Eisa did a fantastic job. I'm done. No, I think he really did. I think the most important thing I was gonna say, and then he said it in his last statement, is when someone is an empathetic leader, they build the muscles in their employees around being adaptable, about having a culture where they're willing to take risk and they're not afraid of failure, but failure can be learning. And they build the muscles around collaboration, whether it's inside or outside their organization. One of the things I think is really critical for the future is empathetic leaders build collaboration not only within the walls of their organization, but they think about a virtual organization with their suppliers, or in my industry with consumers, because innovation can come from anywhere. And you have to be able to collaborate even outside the boundaries of the physical organization that you lead. So I absolutely believe that it's a critical skill for the future leaders, for the modern leader, and that they are reliant on their organizations being able to be adaptable, but they build skills for adaptability, for collaboration, and for risk-taking and innovation. Al?
Building skills.
Yeah.
Al.
No, thanks, Suzanne. I think I could say the same thing. I think say Eisa said it, or I can say Dr. Saadi did a great job teaching Eisa 13 years ago. But the reality is the following. Eisa mentioned something very important. He talked about EQ, and you had great speakers on EQ already in the previous rounds. I think also what I heard my very close friend Joe Cahill, he did mention also nowadays it's all about PI, the people, intelligence, if you want to give it another name. But one of the things that are really important for agile organizations in the future. So all we do, if we really dissect everything we do as an organization, we have 2 assets. We have ideas and we have things, right? So how can we truly combine the 2 in a seamless kind of a way? That's the leader in the future. Means we have got to go back, like all the design thinking and all the ideas we've been implementing over the years. Can we get that into practice where co-creation is the name of the game, right? We cannot assume going into the future we're going to do anything alone, right? Whether it's in this industry or that, or it's purely product or a mixed product services, we've got to co-create. The best thing I heard from one of the Google execs, she was talking about also the importance of the mix of the 3 ingredients, she calls it, for that: diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So reality is, if I'm not hearing as a leader different opinions, if I'm not really looking across geographies and regions and backgrounds and interests, if I'm not really allowing voice to be heard from the ones who sometimes you least expect can bring that creativity and innovation Eisa was talking about, and then also this whole inclusion, that's the future leader's role. I would imagine the titles are going to completely also disappear. This classic project manager or program manager or some of these roles that we typically have seen organizations really get stuck with. This is not the future. The future is going to be, in my personal humble opinion, is that can we get to a place where we are focused on getting the most valued coexistent of this beautiful amount of mindset and intelligence we have around our organizations day in, day out. Otherwise, why are we investing in the kind of transformations and the organization we want to have?
Al, I have one thing I want to say. If you want to live a happy life, select your spouse properly. Okay? Now, if you want to succeed in your organization, you should consider your partners, your teams, and select them the way you select your spouse. Okay? And vice versa. It's a two-way, as we said in the beginning, it's a two-way contract, okay, between the leader and the teams. Okay, they have to select each other.
One thing, I'm going to jump into that because I agree and disagree again. You know, just like also you don't choose your parents. You were born with certain parents. You can still make lemon out of lemon or lemonade out of lemon, whatever it is. But the reality is, yes, I agree. You know, you really want to invest in the choices you make. However, there is no choice that's a bad choice when it comes to organizations mix. I want us to be in a place where we appreciate and recognize that every diverse, different, and especially opposing opinion is the best opinion I want to have around the table.
Yeah, very interesting. Last time, Dr. Shira mentioned about the other voice, the opposing opinion. Now, let us take, please, each one a question and try to answer it in 1 minute so that we can have a couple of minutes for recap. Okay, so let's start with.
Oh,
yeah,
you
go for it, please, Eisa. Okay.
Yeah, I found a good question here by Abdulaziz Khouri. It's a long introduction, but it says, how can culture be managed as a system to do it's built through its DNA? It's a very important question. It's sometimes.
Is it me only, or there was a glitch in the sound?
There was a glitch a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
The question is by Abdulaziz Khouri. How can culture be managed as a system to ensure it's built through its DNA? Because we have repeatedly been talking about things, you cannot make them as a law or force. It has to be a culture. For example, innovation and transparency, openness, empathy, those kind of things need to be as a culture and the DNA of the organization. And as I said earlier, to have any organization culture embedded within every part of the organization, it starts from top. It never starts from the bottom. It has to start from the top. The top should be selected right, and the first two levels of employees or staff to act as champions and to protect this culture. This system will be DNA for ages. I have worked my first career in Schlumberger in the oil field, and all I remember until today is safety and HSE values, environmental, human value. Those kind of things are in the DNA of the organization, although it was found in 1927, but the founder have embedded, and they don't exist today. They're gone. This company is located in tens of countries everywhere, and operations happening everywhere. But that culture is embedded in the DNA of the company because they have seeded the right and they have planted those culture, and it becomes the first thing you learn when you enter this kind of organization. I think we need to learn from those organizations.
And the thing you remember even after years, you leave them. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they are instilled. Yes. So who likes to go next?
I mean, I can go, Suzanne, quickly. There is a question from Nawaf that I believe actually is really critical to why I'm here today. She I believe, I can't tell, Nawaf is a male name probably. And despite the spike in knowledge and piling up of experience, we don't see a drastic change in performance. We got a wealth of knowledge and best practices, yet the outcome doesn't match, not even close, which I fully, first of all, agree with that as a statement. I could also like almost take that as an exact statement. The reason I'm very passionate also, just to tie that, Nawaf, to your question about this topic of today, is that curiosity to me is that one central ingredient for organizations of the future. Yeah. So if I think about how can I create a curious organization, or how can I even take it back to what I call the beginner's mind? If I can truly get us to believe, to break this, egocentric, experiences, because, at the end of the day, you mentioned a while ago about, the choices we make and success, we will continue to fail to capitalize on the knowledge that we have as an organization if we don't reward that kind of a behavior. We have got to, as an organization, the saying, tell me how I'm measured, I'll tell you how I will perform, right? So if we don't really find a way by which we truly understand what does it take to create a safe, I'm using Eisa's word about safety, but not in the pure safety sense, but creating a safe environment for operating in the future, that's the only place where knowledge is going to flow, where knowledge and experiences are going to be looked at as the way of normal practice almost in the organization. So I can only agree fully with Nawaf's comment about the gap, the delta between how much we have and how much are we able to internalize and practice. But I also, just want to remind myself and Nawaf that best practices also, because of the nature and the pace by which change happens, is already a thing of the past, because as we speak now, the practice has moved. So I would really encourage us to be also part of that adaptability and pace, putting always the ownership on ourselves to take those practices and turn them into what is the practice that suits me and fit my organization, if that helps with the question there.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne, we'll take the last question for tonight by Suzanne. Then each one of us will have a minute or two to recap and tell us what you learned tonight, okay, before we close our session.
Okay, the question is, how hard is the adoption of the Agile organizational culture? I think my answer is, it's tough. Culture is one of the hardest things, and I think adoption is a challenging word, because you can't adopt practices. You have to build culture based on what you do. It's not something that you can implement like a project where you check boxes and say, I did these 10 things and now I should have an Agile culture. Culture is something that results based on the behaviors of an organization. So we all talked about it today with experience, and we don't want to leave you with the impression that it's easy to implement culture, but we want you to believe that it's worth it, and that it's necessary to invest in being able to deliver and build a culture of openness and transparency, and the ability for your organization to have the agility to pivot based on uncertainty or opportunity. We talked about hard times, but organizational agility is as much about being able to pivot to opportunities and grow success as it is in dealing with uncertain times. So the answer is, it's hard. Culture, I think, is one of the most difficult things that we do as leaders, but it can also be one of the most natural things that we do. So I encourage you to, go after it, because I think it will absolutely be worth it.
Well, I have something to add here, Suzanne. It's hard, and maybe it might be a long way for some organizations, but I believe walking in this road is very rewarding from the first step. It's not like the waterfall. You will only get the result if you build the whole car or the whole product, okay? It's more like Agile in the perspective that once you step in, you're gonna reap some benefits. Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, but this is how we start to make a belief in the new organization or a new culture and draw people more and more in until we have a trend going into this new and alien direction that will get us to hopefully a better future. So, Suzanne, what's your takeaway for tonight? What's your call for action? We started with you, and at the end, we start also back with you.
So my takeaway is, I'm inspired by the consistency of belief in organizational agility and the examples across the panel. With the diversity of our experiences and the different industries, there are some common principles that I think are really clear, that openness and transparency and behaviors that are contagious are things that can really help, regardless of what industry you're in, what country you live in, or what business you're on. So I was very inspired. So I thank my my panelist colleagues here.
Thank you, Suzanne, for being with us tonight. It is really a pleasure. Okay. Now, Eisa, what do you have as a closing comment or takeaway?
Oh, many things actually, but I have short time. In projects, when we define a project, the first word is it's unique. So managing a unique activity cannot be with an old-fashioned or outdated or unsuccessful attributes or management style. Definitely, to excel this world, always all organizations require to have something better than it was in the past. And it all goes to basics. We have to analyze the basics. The basics are the leaders, the talents that we have in the organization, and we have to define our customers properly. All those kind of things requires more transparency, openness, communication, and creating the right culture to adapt to change.
Thank you, Eisa. Last but not least, Dr. Al.
Saadi, thank you, Habib. So first of all, thanks so much for having us, and I think it's really an important topic. I think it's, if I look even at the chat and the kinds of questions, I think we have a lot to learn from our participants, and I think that says a lot about the folks who get attracted to participate in these panels. I entered by also, today by doing some research, like, how many times organizational agility, if you do a Google search, it comes as like 9 million citations, for example. Future of work, it's about 3 billion citations about future of work. So if anything, it tells us that that topic is important. And I had my views initially around, our ability to experiment and to fail and to unlearn and relearn and all the, I don't want to call it the jargon that usually we hear around the topics and also practiced by folks who advise and consult, including some of the work I do as well. But I think if anything at all, the key learning, and it kind of builds on what Suzanne said and also what Eisa said. So Suzanne talks about the difficulty, you echoed that to create that, but also we talked about simplifying, and you heard me talk about the importance of simplifying, taking initial steps. Eisa talked about muscles, and I'm a big fan of looking at organizational agility and how we are going to shape the future. Just like I look at the challenge back to your partner, when you say your partner, your wife, your husband, she has always struggled with my ability to really stay fit, right? So just like the gym exercise, you're not going to go to the gym once and then go back, look at the mirror and say, oh my God, I managed to really get this done. It's a journey, and it's a muscle practice exercise. The experimentation aspect of organizational agility is massively important. My learning today, I'm going to treat this literally as going to the gym exercise. I truly, personally speaking, and the organizations I work with, I want to make sure that we are practicing either a combo of two views, one the muscle view, and the other one I call it the sponge view, because you saw the comments about learning and knowledge and governance and the kinds of feedback we got from our audience. The reality is we almost need to also combine the muscle building with a sponge-like way of working and operating into the future. You know what's unique about a sponge, right? You absorb a lot of ideas, lots of knowledge, you experiment, test a lot of things, but you have to also be in a position to what? To squeeze that sponge and unlearn and really be able to do what Suzanne was talking about in terms of, bending and tilting and doing some of the things that will be mostly important for operational excellence and our organization's future. So great interactions, and learned a lot from our colleagues here, and also really great feedback on the intelligence and the knowledge shared by the attendees is phenomenal. I hope they realize that this can contribute to many books and maybe inspires a few of us to continue that journey as well.
Actually, after each session, especially the last two ones, I find lots of topics that are really good to do a PhD on each one of them. Okay, not that I'm going to go back to academic research anymore. Nevertheless, it's intriguing to look for questions and to stand on the shoulders of giants to see what's next beyond. And by this, I'd like to thank you again. I'm very happy. I feel I'm privileged to have you, Eisa, Suzanne, Al, with us tonight. Thank you for staying with us that late. Thank you for our audience, and looking forward to seeing our participants again next week when we talk about a new topic this time, which is about the planning of sales by the chairman of Shipley Limited UK, Tony Birch. By this, allow me to tell everybody, stay safe, have a nice afternoon or a nice day, okay, depending where you are. and looking forward to see you with us, inshallah, again in the near future.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.